Hey, welcome back to the Aerospace Executive Podcast. I'm really happy to have Scott Ashton with me. Scott's been a good friend of mine for a long time. He is the president and CEO of Aerox, which is a company that manufactures oxygen systems for general aviation. Recently, he bought a company up in Ohio, which is now branded Aerox Fluid Power. And we're gonna have a great conversation today, Scott, because we're gonna tell people a little bit about your journey from you know big companies to entrepreneurship and ownership, and a little bit of M&A into these small companies that nobody knows about that need some professional management and their importance in the supply chain. So thanks for coming on.
Craig, it's great to be back. It's always great to talk to you. So thanks for having me.
So talk about Aerox a little bit. Tell everybody what you're doing with down in Florida with that company,
Yeah.
and then with Aerox Fluid Power as well.
Yeah. So we bought Aerox back in May of 2020. We closed on that acquisition, and that was my first acquisition as a solopreneur, solo entrepreneur. And boy, we came into that. We didn't know what we didn't know, but we bought the company and took a big plunge, and we managed through the pandemic and grew the company. In 2022, we then acquired one of our competitors, Skyox, which was another kind of a small, sleepy provider of general aviation oxygen systems. And then last year, we did our biggest acquisition, which was Fluid Power, and brought that into the what we now call the Aerox Aerospace Group. So we've done 3 acquisitions, and we've got an appetite for more.
3 acquisitions. See, you walked out of a big company. You go down to Florida. You buy this little company, Carve Out. You've done great growing. You've done great growing that. Then you went out. Now you've bought 2 more companies.
It's been a crazy ride.
And your hair still has color.
A little bit, but it is definitely turning. I'm hitting 55, and it's definitely turning.
What was the biggest wake up call? And I know for me personally, what was your biggest wake up call when you decided to go down the entrepreneur route?
This probably the scope of everything. Everything in that company when we bought Aerox, everything in that little company happened because somebody in our little group, and I think we had at the time 13 employees, made it happen. So when you're in a big company, things happen, outside of your field of view, your domain. Taxes get filed, payroll gets cut, the trash gets picked up. All of that happens. Somebody else worries about it, and you can kind of focus on your day-to-day job. When you own a small company, with 13 employees, there is nobody else. So everything that has to happen in a company happens because one of those 13 people makes it happen. And that was probably initially the biggest wake-up call, was just the magnitude of the scale of everything that you suddenly had to become an expert at. We had to become an expert at doing payroll overnight, because let me tell you, Thursday morning when those checks don't show up in somebody's bank account, you're in a world of hurt. So we had to instantly become an expert at how to do payroll. When we bought the company, we transitioned all of our systems from the prior parent company. We had a transition services agreement. We basically had to rebuild the company from scratch. New payroll system, new MRP system, all new banking, like every system that you rely on to operate the company, insurance, all of that had to be recreated from scratch. And fortunately, we had a lot of relationships in the industry. Lou Timpanero from Allianz is our insurance broker, so I just kind of moved everything right over to him. Legal, Paul Lang is our counsel, so everything went right over to him. So, I already had a group of people that I worked with and trusted, and that made that transition easier, but everything had to be rebuilt from scratch. And we've done it, and now that we've done that, and we've got, we're in a rhythm, even our IT infrastructure, as we've been integrating these acquisitions, it actually is just I don't want to minimize it, but it's kind of like turning the crank, right? I mean, we've got our MRP system already set up. So integrating the new company into our MRP system, it's not trivial, but it's not, we kind of have the playbook. And so we're like a little microcosm of a larger company in terms of how we do acquisitions. But it's been a journey. It's the best way to describe it.
The one statement I hear from people at Honeywell or Lockheed or Boeing or whatever, they run a huge P&L, or they think they run a huge P&L, and you put a $20 million company in front of them and they say, "Oh, that's too small. That's too small for me." Yeah. Do you think
Yeah,
that that's a mistake in thinking that way?
it is a total mindset shift. Um, there is nobody else, and you can't kind of sit above the company like you can on it with a bigger P&L. You've got to be down. You've got to be down in the weeds, in the trenches every single day, fixing stuff. Where I think tonight we're going to replace some lights here at Fluid Power after hours. It's what it is, and it's true of any small business. It's not it's not just what we're doing or aerospace. I mean, anybody that runs a small business, from a coffee shop to your company to anybody else that runs a sub $10 million business, we're all in the arena together, and that's what running a small business is. So if you're not wired for that, then definitely don't do it, because if you think you're going to be managing everybody else, there is nobody else. And so you've really got to know the ins and outs of that business, and every single thing that happens in that company. You've got to know how it works.
Do you find it
Which is
humbling?
great. I love it. Oh yeah, yeah. Every day is humbling. Every day is humbling. But and I've got a great team. That's probably the single most important learning over my career is the team that I've built, and I've done it a couple of times. And when you have a team like we have here, or like I've had in a couple of other prior businesses, it makes running the company so much more enjoyable. And that's been a journey. We've had to move some people out, move some people in, but my senior leadership team now, as I call them, the head of sales, operations, and quality engineering, my CFO, who happens to be my wife, and now my general manager at Fluid Power. We operate the group as a leadership team. We meet every week. We run on EOS. So those of you who run small businesses are probably familiar with that. That's the entrepreneurial operating system based on the book Traction. So we've been on EOS now for about 2 years, and that's been, I'll say, that's been kind of transformative for us, because it's really given structure to the company. So when you're in a big company, when you're at a GE or a Honeywell, they have a Honeywell operating system, kind of a management op tempo through the year, strategic planning, personnel planning, goals setting, things like that. When you run a small business, the what's right in front of you kind of overtakes that long-term view. So EOS allows you to take a step back and do some long-term planning. Think about your 10-year goal, your 3-year objectives, your 1 year, your quarterly, then that's where the 90 IO is. It's kind of, you manage to a 90-day rhythm with your goals and objectives. And that's been fantastic for us, because it's provided some structure that we didn't have by being a small business. But any of these systems or management books that you read that are really good, like Good to Great, they always talk about the people, and building that team is probably the most satisfying thing that we've done. And it's an evolution. We're continuing to do it, but right now we've got a really, really good team that's taken, honestly, quite a while to put together.
What's the what was it? Yeah, I mean, look, building teams is hard. What was the one thing as a small business? What was the most important trait that you were looking for with each individual person?
So we've got 3 core values, and this actually comes out of EOS. And EOS again provided the structure for us to have. We had a pretty in-depth discussion about core values, and actually at our last quarterly, we talked about the 5 dysfunctions of a team and building trust, especially bringing in an acquisition and trying to put 2 teams together. So EOS provided us a structure to talk about our core values, and we've got 3 core values. One is that we're all on the journey together, right? Which means that we know that we're not a perfect company, we're not perfect people, but we're on the journey, which means that every day when I leave and I lock the door behind me, I want to know that we're a little bit better at the end of the day than we were at the beginning of the day. And so we're all moving towards that common objective of just being better every single day. And when somebody raises their hand and said, hey, I messed this up, we don't find fault, we don't point fingers, we get to the root cause and we fix it and we move on. So that's one of the things that I want to promote amongst all of our team members is, how do we do things better every single day, and that's a real important core value. Along with that is personal integrity. And it's more than just, hey, I'm not going to steal from the company. It's really how you show up, how you wake up in the morning, how you show up, how you do your job. Are you enthusiastic? Are you motivated? Do you have a sense of shared success? And that's our second core value. And our third is relentless customer service. And I've been in, as you know, the aviation industry really since I was 17 years old, starting to work at an FBO in Connecticut on the weekends. So I know a lot of people in the industry, and a fairly senior executive in the industry bought some stuff from us last night on our website, which is really cool to see his name. And so, these are people that I know, that I do business with, that I see at Oshkosh and trade shows. So our word, like when we commit to something, it's more than just Aerox saying, hey, we're going to do this. It's me personally, because these are my personal friends. These are people that I've known a long time. This is my reputation in the industry. So customer service is something that is extraordinarily important to us. So when we hire, getting back to your question, when we hire, I always go through our core values, and you can tell if that lights people up and say, hey, yep, that's me. They'll always give you lip service. They'll always say, hey, that's great. But you can tell by their reaction whether that really resonates with them or whether they're just looking for a job. You can just tell. And so one of the things that we've learned through EOS and other things that we've done is to hire for core values and then train for competency.
I love it. Yeah, I'm thinking about in my mind the athlete. Just the athlete. Hey, a little short on experience, or not quite the right fit for the role, but they're something in their background that's so good, and they're so smart that you're like, well, they'll figure this out. Let's get them on board. And you said a couple of things: the integrity and reputation. I was watching my daughter and I were watching the Pat McAfee show the other day. Tom Brady was on, and I suddenly got it. What made Tom Brady the GOAT? And he was talking about the team showing up, everybody getting a little bit better, the integrity on the field. And my sense with Tom was, I finally got it. I'm looking at him and going, if you showed up, not ready to go, no integrity, you're going to hear it from him. And the answer was, you're not going to screw up my reputation. Yeah.
Right.
Get your ass in gear.
Yep.
And I finally figured out that's the mentality that made him as good as he is. It's not about the athleticism. It was about the discipline and the integrity.
Yeah, and that integrity comes to play. I mean, we don't have to go down the Boeing road, but we just did an all hands, and it was the first time we had done a group wide all hands with both sites. We had, I was in Ohio, but we had the Florida site on simulcast on Teams, and we talked about integrity and why what we do is important. And I showed a photograph of that Boeing aircraft with the plug blown out of it. And I said, when people use our products, this isn't hyperbole, right? Here's the picture. When people use our products, their lives are in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, you know, you're not just putting together stuff that's going to go on the shelf and we ship it out and never think about it again. Like the stuff that you're doing, all right, our oxygen masks, our regulators, really no matter what the situation is, when they're using our products, is literally life or death. And it was the
Mm-hmm.
first time some of them had really kind of put that together. And that's why integrity is so important, and which is why
Mm-hmm.
other companies are having issues with that. But it really is something that we try to live, you know, every single day.
I love it. I mean, that's it. Somebody's flying their Cirrus at 15,000 feet and they need your system. They
Yeah,
expect it to work. They expect it to work.
yeah, and
And
it's life or death. If it doesn't work, you can get hypoxic, you can have other
Mhm.
issues. So, you know, it's and now with the fluid power acquisition, we are, you know, so we're general aviation, as you said at the introduction, but we're also business aviation. We're on the 609 tilt rotor. We're on all of the space programs. You know, the private space programs. Where, you know, through fluid power, we do a lot of military type equipment.
Mhm.
So, you know, the stuff that we do is throughout the entire aviation industry, and it's life or death, which is true of everybody in the industry. We're all in the same boat in that regard.
Well, look, Alaska Airlines and their aircraft manufacturer thanking their lucky stars that nobody was sitting in that row unbuckled, right? Or some
Right,
kid,
right.
or some kid wasn't sitting on some mom's lap. You know,
Yeah, and it was
it's
only at 15,000 feet instead of 38,000 feet.
right, and
You
that's a
know,
big oop. That's a big oops. I mean, that's just what it
right.
comes down to. So, well, hey, let's shift gears a little bit.
Hmm.
Mergers and acquisitions. So you've done three. I mean, you found this little carve out through a good mutual friend of ours,
Yep.
and you've been wildly successful with it. And then you found a couple other. Then you found a couple other small companies
Yep.
off the radar. Yeah.
Off the radar.
Talk about that. Talk about those processes a little bit. And
So, one of the other things that I've done as part of my journey is I'm a member of Vistage. So Vistage is a CEO group of individuals that typically own their own company, small business owners, and we meet once a month. And you know, I have kind of a reputation for chasing shiny objects, because every month I come in, I'm like, oh yeah, I just found this other little company and this other little company. So I've got a bit of a reputation for chasing shiny objects, but we're pretty focused on finding small companies in the oxygen slash safety space where we can add some value. And what's going on in the industry, what we're seeing is that there are a lot of little companies that were formed by entrepreneurs, owner operators in the, you know, call it as low. I mean, we've looked at companies as low as $1 million a year of revenue, a million up to call it 5 million of revenue, maybe 1 million of EBITDA, that are going through a generational transition now. So, you know, those owner operators are in their mid 60s, maybe early 70s,
mm-hmm,
family run. So, you know, the husband is kind of maybe the mad scientist, and the wife, maybe, you know, bookkeeper slash HR.
mm-hmm.
10, 5, 10, 15, 20 employees. And, you know, it's provided a great lifestyle for them. But now they're looking for an exit strategy. And, you know, it's tough because they're way too small for a private equity firm to come in and put the sweat equity that's really required for that company to continue to grow and thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, finding an exit strategy is really kind of tough for them. So a strategic won't pick it up, a financial won't pick it up, but you know, it's a perfect opportunity for an owner entrepreneur to put together an SBA loan or friends and family round and go and snap up these companies. It's a ton of sweat equity. You get in there and, you know, they may be on QuickBooks, no MRP system. You know, the owner may have a stack of drawings on his
Yep.
desk. Uh, you know, no CAD system other than, you know, maybe AutoCAD from 20 years ago. And you know, now you got to build a real aerospace company out of it. And you know, but with a lot of sweat equity and a little bit of luck and talent, you know, you can start to build a nice company.
What was the biggest when you bought Skyox? It
Mm-hmm.
was very you know, small, family owned, individual
Yeah.
owned. Biggest challenge? What was the biggest challenge when you walked into that thing? What did you learn right off the bat that you wish you knew from the very beginning?
Um, how small it really was. We didn't, so, and that is part of it. So we didn't get great financials. It was kind of a handshake deal. That was a little bit different. We really just bought, it was an asset sale. We bought the product line, the brand. Um, and Sporty's has been a great distributor for us on that. So we kind of re-energized the brand,
Mm-hmm.
and they've done a great job energizing the sales for that product line. Um, but yeah, we had to kind of build it from scratch, rebuild it from scratch. So we bought all the assets and then kind of stood up Skyox as a product line within Aerox, kind of just by brute force. But fortunately, I mean, the advantage for us was that we had that infrastructure already. So somebody coming in not having that infrastructure, I'm not sure they would have been able to do it. But we already had the supply chain, we already had, the bills of material, we had the marketing, we had the brand and everything. So it was pretty easy for us.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody else coming in, I think, would have had a real challenge with that company. And that's part of the challenge with these small businesses is that a lot of the intellectual property goes out the door when the founder walks out, either every night or cashes the check and walks away from the business. And that's a big challenge. And it's a big challenge for the industry because a lot of these small companies are key suppliers and the first and second tier of the supply chain. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, so a large tier two, tier one company may be dependent on this small company for a key component that if they don't deliver, airplanes don't get shipped.
Mm-hmm.
And, the owner says, "Hey, I'm retiring." And now you're left scrambling, either resourcing or doing something. So, it's an opportunity for entrepreneurs in very small companies to come in and kind of, be the hero of the day, take this small company that, really hasn't had any investment, modernize it a little bit. And, it's great for the entrepreneur because you get to run a small aerospace business and with an established customer base and established product line. And, it's not without risk, but it's way easier than starting from scratch.
What kind of due diligence are you? I mean, look, it's very hard to do. It's hard to do a lot of due diligence. It's kind of
Yeah.
a garage. It's almost a garage or storefront business that Bob started, and
Yep.
what kind of due diligence do you do, and what are the resources that you bring in to make sure? Hey, look, what do I really have here?
So, that's very, very difficult because when an investment banker is representing a larger company, they can invest in a data room, with 15 folders full of all of your HR information, all of your financial information. You can do your inventory testing,
Mm-hmm.
quality of earnings. You can do everything that you need to do to do your due diligence, environmental.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we don't have those resources available to me as a buyer. They don't have the resources available to them as a seller.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of what you're buying is the integrity of the seller. And that's something that you just got to kind of go with your gut on that. Like, is this guy or
Mm-hmm.
is this seller, is this woman, somebody that has run a good, trustworthy business over the last, couple
Mm-hmm.
of decades? Are they trying to hide something? That's that's something you've got to really establish a rapport with. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like I try to establish a rapport with the seller whenever I can, because that's when you kind of tell, okay, is this somebody I want to do a deal with? And that was, I mean, we've looked at deals where I've met the seller and I said, I don't want to do a deal with this person, and we've walked away.
Mm-hmm.
Just not for any good reason other than I could tell like it was going to be a difficult transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then this one, the sellers were great, very easy to deal with, gave me carte blanche. Anything, I spent a couple of days up here doing inventory testing, met with the team. They were very transparent. Still a lot of surprises, and we kind of knew what we were getting.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to leverage your experience as a somebody who's run a business, bigger business for somebody else. You got to just leverage that experience and dig where you can, because you can't even afford to do a quality of earnings. So we talked to an accounting firm for this transaction to do a quality of earnings, and what that was going to cost, it would have blown the economics of, and it's just a QuickBooks file. So I had my accountant look at the QuickBooks file, and we looked at tax filings, like the things that are going to get you right. So taxes will always get you. So you got to make sure your taxes are paid. You got to make sure payroll is set, all of your HR stuff. So we could drill into that because we had access to their payroll system. Their customers, I mean, we know their products because they're our products. So that made it pretty easy. And then we had to do an assessment of, what's the transition look like? So, and then where's the cost savings? So we had to migrate them over to our IT system. We had to migrate them over to our MRP system. We had to migrate them over to our insurance, health insurance, payroll. So, and it's just us, like, in a big company, an integration team goes in and, you got 50 people to do all of that. We had to do it ourselves, and we are doing it ourselves. But, that's the sweat equity that we put into the deal. And, that's what makes the deal work, is that, you're there late nights doing the heavy lifting. And that's what makes it satisfying. So at the end of the day, Aerox and Skyox and now Aerox Fluid Power, the Aerox group, it's all us. It's our team. And, it's satisfying for everybody. My head of engineering, my head of operations, it's us. And you can have an impact, and you can have an impact on a company in a way that you can't have in a much bigger organization. And that's very satisfying. And it's fun. It's fun when you have a great team and you're doing really cool work, and, a big company sends you an RFI. You're like, wow, we're on the radar. That's just super satisfying. And it's scary because you're operating without a net. We don't have access to millions of dollars of capital to invest. And so that gets a little scary, and you've got to be wired for that level of risk.
Yep. It's a different mindset. Yeah. I mean, it's a totally different mindset.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, I'm a great executive. I'm a great executive. Okay. We'll go into this $10 million business and do a $2 million acquisition and figure out, get it. It's a total skill set difference. Yep. It's a mindset difference. It's a total skill set difference. It's, as I say, it's getting down to the trenches and digging and getting dirty and digging ditches. I mean, it's the ability to hand it over to everybody else and say, figure it out is limited.
It's the tugboat captain, right?
It's exactly what it is.
And the reality, look, the moment that reality really smacks you in the face is when you're in your conference room and you're signing the paperwork for the mortgage on the house. That's when reality smacks you in the face. And the reality is, I couldn't do it without having an extraordinarily supportive wife, right? She's our CFO. And, she's been on the journey since March of 2020, when I called her from the airport and I said, hey, I think we're going to buy this company in Florida. And, she's been along for the ride and been pretty fearless. So that made the transition much easier, from a W-2 to an entrepreneur.
How do you value a company where you really can't figure out the quality of earnings? I mean, how do you figure out what you're going to pay for that?
So, we looked at it. We looked at this one on an EBITDA multiple. So I did do an EBITDA, and so I looked at kind of a run rate on their EBITDA, and I did what I thought was a reasonable multiple on that. And then, to kind of test that, I did a pro forma, like what would it be with all of our synergies, and then we did an adjusted EBITDA, and I made sure that both of those were, we're in line with our expectations. And then the other thing from a risk management perspective was, we took a pretty big haircut on, okay, well, if this really doesn't work out, like, can we cover the debt, and what does that look like? And so, as long as I was comfortable with that, we were okay. And really, this deal, because it was a little bit larger, we really tried to manage the downside risk. Like worst case scenario, what does this do to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the company went to almost zero and we just had to keep it on a slow burn, like could through Aerox, could we continue to service the debt and all that? And we were fine. So that was really kind of how we got to the valuation. It really wasn't anything that I
Mm-hmm.
would call extremely scientific,
Mm-hmm.
but it was really just a kind of a comfort level that we had.
Gotcha. So you do that now. A small business, a lot of your clients, customers. I mean, it's nice when a guy shows up with a credit card because
Yep.
you're going to get paid tomorrow or
Yep.
immediately. But a lot of your customers are, a little bit larger and they want payment terms. How do you manage it?
Yeah.
And it's aerospace. Everybody, big companies want, big payment. They want long payment terms.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that as a small business?
You you implore it. You beg and you implore to their goodwill, because honestly, we're not, being a small company, 90-day terms with us isn't going to change anything on, a tier one or tier two's balance sheet.
Right.
And so, a lot of times you can talk to the buyer and say, look, I'm a small business. I really can't do this. Um, and we've had pretty good luck negotiating that.
Right.
Um, not always. And, fortunately we kind of do that on an exception basis, kind of a
Right.
one-off. Um, but where it's not I'll say a really large part of our revenue. But, if Boeing were, 75% of my revenue on 90-day terms, the business would look way different, and so I don't know how people manage to that. But you have to fundamentally run the business differently when 75% of your revenue is to one or two, airframe OEMs at 90-day terms. Your capital structure's got to be different.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's yeah, that's scary. And we have a good retail business. So, we've got a website, Aerox.com, and we do a good retail business through that. So that helps, that helps the cash flow. And we've got a good distributor base, and that also helps.
What's
So,
do people get scary? I mean, should people, you think about all the supply chain
mhm.
in the aerospace world, and people don't realize it's a lot of, just a small amount of, there's a lot of companies out there that make one or two critical components, and they're the only ones. I mean, do the bigger OEMs realize? Do they care? Do they think about it that much about, how much of their supply chain falls on, this demographic?
I don't think they do until there's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Fluid Power supplies a couple of components to a couple of large OEMs, and when we bought the company, we had a phone call with the head of purchasing, the head of quality, and I walked them through the Aerox story, and that we're AS 9100, that we supply, we're approved vendors for all of these other companies. Showed them some of the things that we do. We talked about some of our other capabilities, our FAA certifications,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually were pretty relieved. And in fact, I think they'll consider us for some additional business, because it did solve a problem for them. The fact that now, that group is part of a, not big, but a little bit bigger aerospace company with some formal systems and things like that already in place. So that'll be a great relationship, and probably a risk mitigation for them. But I don't think that these big companies are doing assessments of, those small suppliers until there's an issue.
And then it's, oops.
Well, yeah, and then you've got two issues. One is the company doesn't typically have the resources to solve the issue. They may not have a, director of engineering or an engineering team, or a big quality department. And then second is, if you were even to do a source selection, like requalifying a small single component in this environment is next to impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, it really leaves the OEM, the tier one, tier two in a bind with these small suppliers who do a great job, but when there's a problem, there's a problem. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for kind of turn. I won't call them turnarounds, but companies that just need a little TLC and a little scale to be able to be a better supplier.
Are they coming to you or are you going to them? How are you finding these people?
It's a little of both. The oxygen space is it's kind of small, so we know who the big players are, who the small players are, and we talk amongst ourselves pretty regularly. But we're always on the search for somebody, quote unquote, under the radar that's looking for an exit strategy. Who wants to see. A lot of times, it's a very personal thing to sell your company, right? You've been in this
Absolutely.
company for 30, 40 years. Your entire identity is wrapped around this company, and you
Hmm.
don't want to sell and including your team, right? So what you don't want is you don't want to sell your company to somebody who you close on Wednesday afternoon and Thursday morning, six 18 wheelers show up to load everything up to move to your plant somewhere in, the middle of the country.
Hmm.
You want somebody who's going to kind of honor that legacy and protect your employees. And, a lot of
Yep.
times we can do that, and I love having a plant here in Ohio. We've got plenty of space. The workforce here is great. Ohio is a great state from what I can see so far about doing business. There's 100 aerospace companies within 50 miles of us, machine shops. So it's got a pretty good supply chain, and the team here is great. So we just promoted from within to a new general manager position, and she's knocking it out of the park. I love having her part of the management team, and we're super happy, and I want to grow this Ohio facility.
What did you learn about, last question, what did you learn about yourself? I mean, you went from, like I said, Sikorsky when I met you, and,
Yep.
Sikorsky, get bought up by Lockheed Martin, business starts changing. What did you learn about yourself going from, down this path? What was the biggest wake up?
Oh boy. Couple of things. So I'm not as I'm trying I'm trying to not be as much of a tornado. I'm known for being pretty intense, not a lot of patience. And so I'm trying to kind of pace myself a little bit. And that actually came from one of my business coaches that I had brought on early when I bought Aerox. And he kept telling me, you've got to conserve your energy. And energy is a lot of different things, right? It's your physical energy, it's your
Mhm.
financial energy. It's like in an airplane, right? Your energy is your
Yeah.
airspeed.
Speed is
Airspeed is
life.
life, right? So the energy that you've got to use very wisely, right? And that energy includes the cash you've got in your bank account, your people, your physical energy of you personally. You've got to use all of those resources very carefully and so I'm getting better at that. I still have a ways to go, but I'm getting better at that. And communication is always part of the journey. And I learned that when I was running the helicopter company for Sikorsky, is that you communicate a message 3 or 4 times and it gets through, and 7 to 10 times you've got to be communicating that vision, communicating that message.
Hmm.
And we've tried to do that here, and every time I'm in Ohio or at our plant in Florida, like I'm always
Hmm.
communicating, where are we headed? Who are our customers? Why are we doing what we do? Why does it require such discipline and
Hmm.
documentation and whatnot? So the communication piece is something that I've never been great at, but
Uh-huh.
I work really, really super hard at it.
I got you. No, that's the communication. Obviously, look, the communication piece in a small business is huge. And the conserving your energy. I mean, yeah, you want to take on a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, I do the same thing. Like, yeah, I want it all and I want it now, right? It's like
Yeah.
the Queen song. And
Yep.
it's impossible.
Yeah.
Pick
Yeah.
your
So
priorities.
so we've had to pace ourselves. Like, I'll just give you one anecdote. So when we bought Fluid Power, we were doing our due diligence, and I'm like, okay, September 1st we close. I want to go live with Master Plan. That's our MRP system. I want to go live September 1st. We'll get everything done ahead of time. Go live September 1st. Well, September 1st became October 1st. I'm like, you know what? We just have to pace ourselves. It's not critical to do this right now. So we're in the process of doing it now. But, sometimes you can't put that burden on everybody else either. Because it's not fair to them. So you got to pace yourself, especially in a small company. You've got to prioritize. And that's one of the things that EOS has done for us is it's given the team the ability to tell me, hey, these are the things we're not going to get done in the next 90 days. So these are the things this is our commitment, right? In this circle. And this circle is all the things we're not going to get done. And we'll deal with that 90 days from now. And so that focus is how you get traction. And because, being a tornado, you want everything done and you want to push all the balls up the hill at the same time. And you really can't do that. You've got to kind of focus, get these things out of the way, and then move on to the next thing. And that's been a little challenging for me because I've got this vision of what I want the group to be. And I want to get there now. And you just don't have the resources to do that, either financial or people or anything else. And which is probably a good thing because it also allows you to manage your risk, right? Which is a huge, huge deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I took on too much in December. I'm like, whoa, I got overwhelmed. I started taking on a lot of initiatives and I finally just pulled back the throttle. I'm like, all right, let's slow down on a couple of things. It's impossible to do it all. I mean, that's the total mind. That's a total mind shift. Could you ever go back? You're an entrepreneur now. Could you ever go back?
Could I go back to the working for somebody?
The other direction?
No way. Yeah. No, you know my history. I'm not a very good employee. I'm great at what I do. I love it, and I love the feeling of success. I love the freedom. I love the thrill of it. I couldn't go back.
I love it.
No way.
I love it. Hey, thanks for coming on today, Scott. Aerox?
Always a pleasure.
Aerox is spelled AEROX.com, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So go find Scott Ashton. He's the founder, president, CEO of Aerox and Skyox and Aerox Fluid Power Systems.
Yep.
Enjoyed having you today,
Craig.
Scott. Thanks for coming on again.
Awesome. It was awesome being on, Craig. Thanks a lot and see you soon.
I hope you enjoyed the latest edition of the Aerospace Executive Podcast. You can reach out to me directly, Craig at NorthstarESG.com, or check us out at www.northstaresg.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, or on YouTube. Just do a search for Aerospace Executive Podcast. Thanks again. I'm Craig Pittman.